call to order.
For some
Okay.
reason, I can't get on the website, but I can hear you, so.
Okay.
We-
Well, first,
We can hear you too, nice and clear.
I can't click on launch meeting. Nothing's happening. It's like my computer's frozen, maybe. I don't know. I just got home, so I'm behind, and I haven't even read the minutes, so I apologize.
okay, well, we'll get on to approval of the minutes for anyone who has read them. Yeah, we got them late. I sent them out as soon as I got them.
I only see one correction. It's just a spelling on the second page. Progress reports number 1, Ms. Rack. Shouldn't have a K at the end.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and I have one. Section 7. Under new business, it says Karen Graphics. It should be Karen, Kerrin.
Thank you. I was trying to research both of those and I couldn't find either of them.
Okay, no problem. And that's all I saw. If we're set, does somebody want to make a motion to accept?
If I'm allowed to, since I didn't attend the meeting, I will make the motion.
Well, you're probably not the best one to make the motion.
Okay,
Actually, untrue. If you read the minutes or listen to the recording, you are able to make the motion and vote. You don't have to
there you
abstain.
go.
Well, how would you know if they were correct?
If you listen to the recording,
Well, I didn't listen to the recording.
He didn't
Oh.
listen to the recording.
then don't make the motion.
I withdraw.
I haven't.
I'll
read
make the motion.
Okay. Dan, you want a second?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes. Minutes passed. Now, as for reports, I said in my email, I didn't get the budget report. Apparently there's an issue. I'm not getting emails from Paula. So Kira did get. Yeah, I'll have to talk to her tomorrow and see what's going on.
Well, your budget report is up on the screen, so you can see where you are on all the accounts.
I still don't have it on my, I can't get into it, so for some reason can't get into the meeting on the screen.
No, that's okay. I can call it out. So recording secretary, 41.7% expended. Intern, 55.9% expended. Branding initiatives are whopping $7,500, 41.3% expended, and that is mostly the encumbrance to Silver Petricelli, who is the architect working on the 65 Main plans. And then printing and publications, just 0.7% expended, but after tonight, I presume that that will be more, because that will be on the agenda for discussion. And that's where you have it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get that. I'll figure out what went wrong and I'll get that out so people have it. Okay, as for me, I do have to make an announcement here that Heather is going to be leaving us. And I told her, you know, I'm sorry we're losing. She's going to wait until we find somebody to replace her. Right, Heather?
Yes, I'll be waiting until somebody is able to replace me. Yeah.
Okay, and we appreciate that, and I do want to tell you, you know, I think you've done a good job, so hate to see you go, but understand.
I second that, and thank you, Heather, very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, Heather, you could just say thank you, Brian's, and as most of
Yeah.
us. say.
All the Bryans.
You're gonna miss this. Okay, go on to new business. You saw that I mailed out, I hope you got it, we had 4 new adoption of trade names. Grand Tree Care Tree Removal, Inbound Up IO, their advertising and SaaS, software as a service. Forged on a Farm, online retail, and KC Carpentry, doing light framing and finish carpentry.
I called them all today, Brian.
Okay. Yeah, I give you all I send all the information that I have. If they don't include an email, I can't include it. If they don't include a phone, I can't. But-
Yeah,
Okay. TBA membership, we were up to 64 members as of last meeting, which was up 10 from the prior TBA meeting. So Dan's goal of doing 100, reaching 100 this year, we're on track. After the meeting, we visited one of the recent members, the Pit Stop, for a little team building.
Is that what they're calling it now?
I just threw that out there, Tara.
I call it power networking. We were doing good that night.
Okay. Well, and it really is a chance to network and let the business know that we are supporting them and we appreciate them.
I like that power networking. I'm going to use that. That was good.
Yeah. We're an innovative bunch.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just looking, my computer is giving me funny messages. All right, citizens' comments pertaining to agenda items. So John's our only citizen if he has any comments.
John, they don't even have to only be pertaining to agenda items.
No comment, just listening in. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, I don't have anything under old business or new business. On to progress reports.
Actually, Brian, I added 2 things under new business when I posted the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Actually, one of which should have been under old business, strictly speaking. So number 1, approved transfer of funds to ERTD for ZMAP reprint. We did get the invoices, so that is moving forward. The commission has already voted in principle to fund the reprint up to $1,000. You probably don't, strictly speaking, need to vote to authorize me to put the requisition sheet in, but for, suspenders and a belt.
Okay.
If
Well,
that's the case, I'll make a motion that we authorize the expenditure.
okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the funds to ERTD?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, funds approval is, transfer approval is done.
I'm still hoping that those will come to us by April, but all the funds have to be expended before the end of June. So one way or the other, before the end of June, we'll have the ZMAPs reprinted. And then the second new item I added, which is more new business, is May 2nd, hosting that commercial real estate networking group. We agreed to do May again. I did talk to Bob Fournier the other day. He called about something unrelated. I would like to host that meeting in the space where Jill and G's was.
Yeah,
Now there is a potential tenant coming in. They have not yet made their applications to planning and zoning, so I don't want to tip too much of that hat. At least in principle, Bob has agreed to it. It's going to probably depend at least a little bit on the status with this new tenant. But what I would ask either Yacino or Dan to do is to sort of stay on that with him since he's a TBA member as well, uh, so that we can make those arrangements. And I think everybody here went to the one last year at Lord Thompson Manor. That's that monthly commercial real estate networking group. So this year, because we're planning on doing the marketing of Main Street sort of campaign, I want to kick it off with that group doing a walking tour of Main Street. So leaving from Jill, having the meeting, leaving from Jill and G's, just pointing out that we've got the approved developments, both of the apartments at St. Joe's, the redevelopment of Superior Bakery, which is going to include, some office space for rent when they finally get up there, showing the 65 Main project, and then maybe identifying a couple of those other smaller parcels, which previously would have been unbuildable, that are now buildable for infill development, just to sort of get people interested.
Okay, yeah, and I could follow up with Rob since Dan's got a lot to do and it's an EDC thing anyway. So I'll keep in contact, see if we can maintain that space.
Greatly appreciated.
Okay. Yeah, and I did plan to have the May 2nd thing on next month's agenda anyway. So it wasn't forgotten. I just didn't add it this month.
Yeah, this one's not as complex as last time when we were going through the manor and we, they did food. I mean, I guess the one thing that we'll have to keep in mind is it'll be our responsibility to do refreshments, but nobody's going to be using that kitchen at that time. So it'll just be, pastries and coffee or whatever. But so that would be an expenditure out of the EDC budget as well.
Yeah, not much. I mean, there's nothing open that early. We could always grab stuff from Dunkin'.
Yep.
If you wanted.
Yep.
Okay, on to progress reports. First up is Tira with grant applications and updates.
Okay, let me go to my grants folder because that's how I keep track of them. So ongoing, obviously 65 Main, we've got the 2 grants. We haven't technically tapped into any of those funds yet, because we're still working on the construction documents, although that is wrapping itself up. We got the 90% documents a couple of days ago. Santos and I, have to sit down and go over it, although he's mapped out in his head already clearly the order of action on that. So once the final documents are available, we'll go to work on that. So the first group of funding that we'll be accessing will be the federal funds for the Reno contract, not yet finalized on the programming grant, but very close now. I had what appears to be confirmation from my administrative contact at USDA that they are writing up the final contract now. So that is good. Let's see, what else do we have here? Not a grant I have submitted yet, but one I am going to. You'll remember a couple of years ago, I submitted a grant that was unsuccessful to fund the wayfinding program, fabrication and installation. That same program just opened up again. It is no match requirement. They consider the design work paid for by the town to be the local match. Graphics Unlimited is working up a revised project estimate for me because our project estimate is from 2020, so it is almost certainly too low. And then once I have that in hand, I'll submit again. I feel pretty sure we were a near miss the last time, so I'm optimistic that we'll get that funded. Of course, we don't know till we know. The recreational trails grant, I've spent about half of the 16,000 from the award from last year, paying for Daniel's construction documents. Had a meeting with the Butlers last week or the week before, I think, and we've come to an agreement on next steps regarding the piece of their property that we ultimately want to attach to the airline trail there. And I'm going to pay Daniel from J&D to go back out, do a slightly revised boundary survey of that parcel. We don't actually need the 1.1 acres. It can be a much smaller portion of that parcel. And the Butlers have some specific needs in terms of their access on the back half. So that needs to be revised, and he's got to show the actual construction footprint and topo for the clearing and grading and the installation of the turntable. So that's the existing grant. And I submitted the day before the deadline earlier this month to the same grant program with a request for just over $600,000 matched by our portion of the ARPA funds that were put aside for the construction and implementation. This is going to be the last time I submit to this grant program because after this, one way or another, we're going to have to start construction once those documents are done. Kim Bradley at Deep tells me they expect to notify people sometime in April. I look at that as probably being sometime in May at least, but definitely by the end of June, we'll know if we're going to be constructing the whole project or just what we can get done on the ARPA funds. Let's see. Brownfield grant continues to creep along at a glacial pace. My last update from DECD is that it is with the Attorney General's office, still to finalize the contract. Once we have the document in hand, all parties will sign immediately. And the current owner of the property has indicated that he will sign anything that the grant partners need. So that's that. And as soon as that's signed, we can go to work. So, you know, we're going as fast as we can. It's just not very fast. Lot SIP grant, the sidewalk grant for Riverside Drive is just about concluded. They've got a punch list to complete in April. And I just yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, because yesterday was the snow day. Submitted a new application to Lot SIP for the reconstruction of Main Street and the Main Street sidewalks continuing up Route 12 until the sidewalk terminus in front of the church that's now being used as a resident. So of course, we don't know if we're going to get approved for that or not. But just to give everybody proper expectations on that grant, the way it works is they sort of line up the approved projects one after another, and they fund them one at a time because the pot of money that it replenishes from with the state refills itself at a rate of, I want to say it was $750,000 a year. Plainfield and Putnam are ahead of us, and our project estimate on the Main Street road and sidewalk project is about $3.3 million. So even if it is approved, my best estimate of when we would go to construction on that would be 4 to 6 years.
Yes.
So a long view, but it's still in our benefit to get in queue.
Yeah.
Library roof, the bids are open on that right now. The bid period will close next Friday. I expect to have multiple bidders. And then Santos and I will review the bids, choose the lowest competent bidder, and the library roof will get redone. Another pending grant is a T-Mobile hometown grant that I'll be submitting to undertake improvements in Swanson Park, which is the Veterans Memorial Park across the street from Milltown Grill. We were actually supposed to meet at the Legion with the veterans groups last night. They got snowed out, but so far everybody seems really happy about it. Now that's likely to be a highly competitive grant program, but we are going to also strategize ways to crowdfund and do a capital campaign locally to get it done. and Steve Lewis made a really nice, in fact, let me pull it up because it's just so pretty. A really nice concept drawing that everybody seems to like. Bear with me and I'll show you. So right now you can see here on your screen, this is where the existing monuments are. They are totally overgrown by these horrible yew bushes. So you can only barely see one of them. We are proposing removing all of those bushes and relocating the monuments here. You see in the middle of your screen, on a reconstructed walkway that will even it out, because right now there's a dip in the grade where the existing walkway just becomes a little duck pond when there's any water at all. So improving the grade, improving the surface, widening it so that there's this area where they can actually perform memorial ceremonies, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and then, you know, adding benches and adding ornamental trees. The white circles are existing trees. We're only proposing to remove those if they are either dead, damaged, or diseased, or if it proves that they are invasive species. I actually think they are all invasive species, but we need to make sure of that. And then these would be smaller flowering ornamental trees to be planted along the walkway. So that is what we're proposing. We have not yet developed the cost estimates for it. We were going to do that after we met with the veterans and got their feedback. The T-Mobile grant is a $50,000 maximum ask, no match requirement, but again, highly competitive. So we need to have like a level of work that we can get done at $50,000 and then figure out how we would backfill any overages in that plan. So that's that.
Oh, you took it away too fast. I was gonna ask you to scroll up a little bit.
Oh, I can go back. I can go back. Hold on. Share screen again. Yeah, what do you want to look at?
Scroll up a little bit to the parking.
Yeah, and this parking actually is on a separate plan. We're proposing taking a small amount of this away here and actually doing angled spaces.
That's
So
exactly what I was gonna ask, if there was a way to create more parking up there.
yeah, we can add 3 or 4 more. I think this is either 4 or 5 spaces. We've got 4 drawn here, but I think it's actually striped out at 5. The angled parking, we figure we can fit 8, but it does require a very small amount of the park to be infringed on. But
I think that's worthy. for
insignificant,
Create some
yeah.
more parking, right, definitely. Yep.
Let's see, go back to the grant folder. That's probably almost all of them, but let me just be sure. Yeah, because I already talked about the USDA grant for 65 Main. So that's what I've got for grants ongoing or upcoming. Questions?
Tara, regarding Main Street, does that mean that it won't be paved until that sidewalk process is completed, or will the town look to pave that in advance?
You have to do sidewalks before you do roads.
Because I know a lot of people in town complain that we aren't taking care of that road. And of course, it would be nice to complete that loop, but now hearing that it's going to be as much as 6 years, that's a long time to leave that road in that condition. And they might ask about that on May, at the May meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is. There are other grant programs theoretically that we could apply to, but most of them involve a match. So LOTSIP is sort of a unicorn grant in that there's no match required. And it funds up to $3 million. The one for the wayfinding, for example, also has no match requirement, is also through CT dot, but the project range is only for $100,000 to $800,000. That doesn't get us either thing in its entirety, either the sidewalks or the road. So it's not an alternate to parcel it out that way. I
Is
had
that,
considered, I had floated by the engineer. I asked his opinion if he thought that we could submit just to get the sidewalks done and that our local guys could do the road reconstruction. He said is the extent to which it needs to be repaired really is beyond the capacity of the local DPW. It's got to be jobbed out. So we took that off the table and just submitted it as a whole project.
thank you, that makes sense. My other comment would be on the park with the extensive use of ornamental cherry trees. I did have ornamental cherry trees in my last property and they are gorgeous, but when they shed their flowers, they can be quite a mess. And there are a lot of trees there. I'm just wondering if we are aware that that'll take some maintenance more than just mowing from DPW.
We haven't gotten that far in it, Brian. And just as an aside, Steve drew cherry trees. One of my return comments on that, and it doesn't actually particularly address your concern, because I think the same thing would happen here, is that I would prefer those to actually be native species flowering trees, and also native species flowering trees that are from the same landscaping scheme that we're using on the sidewalks. So that would be either red buds or service berries, shadbush, both of which turn from flowers. Actually, they would have less mess because they turn from flowers to fruit. So there's not as much petal shed. But that doesn't entirely address your question. It just says, cherry trees are drawn there. That's not written in stone. It could be some other ornamental species.
I would hope it could be that they do look really pretty, but just want to make sure we've thought of everything. Because a lot of times plans are made and we don't think about the maintenance end after.
Sure. Charlie, did you just try to say something? Because you're on mute. You moved your mouth, so I wasn't sure if that was directed at us.
Actually, I was just agreeing with Brian. Lots of times things are done without considering the ongoing cost of maintaining it. And, it's not a one-time deal. So I agreed. Brian said it goes on. I said, yeah, it does. Sorry. Didn't mean, I'm going to take my picture off.
Anybody else? Any questions, comments, anything?
Yeah, thank you for all of that, Tara. All right, if we're good, we'll move on. Website notes. I don't have any. I haven't actually done much with our website except look for agenda and minutes.
I do have one thing about the website I want to ask. I noticed that there's a meeting calendar on the website
Yep.
and the TBA meeting's not on it.
So the TBA meeting is not a town government meeting.
Okay,
That meeting calendar is for departments.
okay,
In theory, I wouldn't object to TBA being on there, but it is not an official government
okay,
commission or anything.
all right, fair enough.
Could that be something that we could put on the EDC's page?
Perhaps. Let me go to the EDC page quickly while I'm
We
zipping
are,
around.
the business association is on the town's website. I just noticed the calendar and was thinking, why not? But it is what it is.
Yeah, I just went and what is on the town's website under Economic Development Commission, on the left-hand panel with all of the persistent links, right? All of those items in that table. There is Thompson Business Association, but when I click on it, it does not launch the TBA page. It takes you to another page that says Thompson Business Association, blah, 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 monthly meetings. Click here for the TBA website. Honestly, if it were me, I would say we should be skipping that and just have that be a direct link to the TBA. Generally, reducing clicks is a good idea. But that is a very minor point, so that might be something that you might ask Renee if she's okay with us doing.
Okay,
Okay, so Renee would be the one. I was thinking we talked to Jody, but
No, because it would it's manipulating the town's website, not the TBA's website.
so the double click is both on the town side.
The extra click is entirely through the town side.
Okay,
yes, right, yeah.
yeah, I haven't done that in a while either. I can picture it, but I do remember a couple of clicks.
There's two. One gives you an email link. I just checked them myself as well. The other one takes you to TBA's page.
Okay. Yeah, like Tara said, anything to streamline is usually good.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, sure, okay.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else for website notes, move on to 11th Village Progress.
So our very dear friend Charlene called me she messaged me last night and called me this morning. She very much wants to get back on the stick with finishing the buildings that we have. Now, I will fully admit I have been pretty relaxed about it for quite a number of months. A few months ago, Mike Joyce emailed me to say that I should expect to see an invoice from Dave Hancock, which I never saw. So I'm assuming that something came up for Mike. Now, Yacino, you and I have talked about this sort of very loosely for a couple of months now.
And I did talk to Mike.
You did? Okay, so tell me what your update is.
Yeah, the problem was in the fall before, we ran out of weather. He had gotten COVID. He had to be, isolated. They didn't get as much done in the late fall before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
He plans to get back on it within a month, probably in April when the weather stabilizes. Right now, it's hard to plan because it could be 50 or it could be 20 degrees.
Okay.
So he plans to at least finish the roof. He should be able to get those other incidentals done. He said, I don't know if we have any more money set aside, and I told him we do.
Yes, we've got about just over $4,400 left on
I
that
told him
PO.
it was about 4,000. So he's hoping there's no distinct plan, but he's hoping to get, onto another shed after he finishes what he needs to do on the existing ones.
Okay, so my guess is that $4.5 grand is going to cover the completion of the one he's got and some touch-up work on the bank building. I do not think it's going to be anywhere near enough money to get us another shed.
Well, he's sure it's going to finish everything that we need to finish on the existing ones.
That I am reasonably sure of as well. So if you are you planning on talking to him again?
Yeah, we're going to try to keep in contact. So yeah, we had trouble with emails. We email each other and they get kicked back both ways. We ended up talking on the phone again. Technology. I'm just so frustrated.
It's not just you, Brian. Sometimes emails from my office will not go through to the school. It has something to do with the way they've set up their protocols. Yeah,
we ended up talking on the phone, which is fine. I prefer that, but don't bother him during scheduled school time and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, we did talk. We'll keep in contact.
Okay, so my request to you is if you can before the end of the week, call him, text him, email him, whatever, and ask him to put his order in with Dave Hancock so that I can put the requisition in to get Dave Hancock paid before they need to do the construction.
Okay.
Let's do what we can while there is no weather.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
I made a note. If I remember to read it, we'll be good.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so that's it, unless anybody has anything else on the 11th Village. We'll move on to Trainwreck Park.
Well, the main update I gave you more or less under the grant thing, I've got Daniel's completed site work for the parking area and the on-road traffic calming. But like I said, I have enough money in the existing grant to pay him to go back and revise the boundary survey for the turntable. So that shouldn't be too problematic. But Daniel is actually out on parental leave right now because he just had a brand new baby 2 weeks ago. So
Oh.
he's working like half time at the office. But he said he would have that back to me in plenty of time for April, which is the deadline that I gave him based on when the next round of grants might be announced. And then once I have that, I can go back to the Butlers and say, okay, now let's get serious about talking about the acquisition piece. Because the other thing that the original grant will fund is the legal fees and the acquisition of that piece of property from the Butlers, which ultimately we will turn over to the state to attach to the airline trail. You know, moving parts, but definitely real progress, which is fantastic.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is bicycling and other events. We have,
Charlie, you're up.
Okay, the 26th is the next running of the Natchug Epic. Beth from Thompson Together contacted me about they're going to be taking more of the initiative to provide course marshals or flaggers or whatever they're called. And that event has a volunteer coordinator, so I've stepped even further back. I made sure that Daniel and Beth both got into the loop with that new volunteer coordinator. I haven't seen any email from him personally. It's just that. I've seen him from his boss, from Richard. But it looks to be, and I think we said this last month, but they expect somewhere around 850 riders. And of course, a lot will depend on the weather, but recently I saw an advertisement for it where Richard was out on a dirt road somewhere with snow and slush, and he's saying it'll be gone maybe, you know, and he smiles because they want to ride through that. They're crazy. So that's rolling along, and I did reach out to them about what if I could do anything for their Saturday event, which is mostly going to be in Putnam. And I haven't seen anything back on that. Time is ticking away, but I was there as a helper. I'm not getting paid. I'm not under direction for it. I'm just trying to make sure that enough people are aware of it so that we can get some benefit for the town. And I did post something on Thompson Together and a couple of other sites about the opportunity. So don't know of any other specifics. We are still looking at, the Wyndham Land Trust has purchased the property which was owned by the Boy Scouts on Buck Hill on the east side of town. And they are opening that up for additional mountain bike trails. Michael St. Lawrence is our president. He asked for volunteers to help map out that area. Once that piece goes in place, for those of you that don't know, that will be just about 85% of all the property along the state line, and maybe even more, between Rhode Island and Connecticut. And it does run up against several land management areas in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So it makes a very nice magnet to draw people in. We'll just have to see how it progresses. Mapping of those routes and getting them up on the website is one of my priorities for the next few months. That's it, as far as I know.
Okay. Final item is marketing of Main Street, including 65 Main. I threw it all under one general heading because that's what we're doing. Just to let you know, we did do during our, what did you call it, Dan, at Pit Stop? Our networking, what?
Power networking.
Power networking. We actually had questions about Main Street, including the St. Joseph School, and so, you know, Dan and I are able to talk about that with people who want to know, let them know there is some progress, as Tara mentioned, with Superior Bakery and 65 Main and all the grants in progress, all the grants pending. I don't know, do you have anything else that hasn't been mentioned, Tara?
No, I mean, the Main Street marketing campaign is right now at least partially budget dependent, right? Because it's your budget ask for next year. Those budget meetings with Board of Finance are ongoing this month.
Yeah.
The Board of Finance does not publish on their agenda beforehand which budgets they're looking at from week to week. Now, in practice, what they tend to do is go in the order of the account numbers in the book, and EDC is in the 6,000s. So, for example, I think it is unlikely they will talk about it tomorrow night, but because it's not published, I'm at least dialing in from home on every one of those in case I need to jump in and defend your choices or, you know, some other department that I have a connection to. So anybody who's available on Thursday nights, I highly recommend you just set your laptop up and have it on background in case your budget needs to be defended, because it will be more it's always more effective the more people chime in to demonstrate need, you know, and speak on behalf of it. As you guys know, the economic development budget has not fared well in the last few years. They've been cut. You know, we started off 4 years ago with $25,000 as an annual projects budget. And as of last year, they had us down to $7,500, all while asking why there's no economic development work going on in the town. So, you know, I can answer those questions all day and all night long, and I do. But when it's just me and my voice, some of that emphasis gets lost because, well, that's just her talking again, right? The more varied the perspectives that they hear in these meetings, the more valuable it is. And, you know, you guys would be under the citizens' comments section. Well, no, Yacino as chair would probably be able to speak directly as they're discussing. Anybody else would be, you know, giving their comments as citizens, which means the way those agendas are structured, it's before they start talking about anything. But it may be even worth it to go in on a random meeting under citizens' comments, say that you represent Economic Development Commission, say, look, I don't know if you're talking about this part of the budget tonight or not, but here's my perspective on why it's important. Same thing with TBA members. You can encourage them to do that because that has a direct relationship on their livelihoods, right? So, you know, it's got to sound like it's more than one person's ideas to get this stuff done. So, and until that budget gets passed, we don't know if we can pursue that or not.
How do you log into that meeting?
Just like anything else, it's there'll be a published agenda. There is a published agenda with a Zoom link to dial in. All of the major boards do at least hybrid, and so they have that online component.
I just went to that calendar and found the meeting, but I don't see a link or anything. I don't know where to find it.
So to get to the agendas for particular boards or commissions, you go to the boards or commissions page and you look at the agenda, and the the link should be published as a part of the agenda, just like they are with ours.
Oh,
And if it's not there, I don't know what to tell you. That's how it's supposed to be.
It's there on finance.
I found it now.
Yeah,
yeah,
okay,
thank you.
good.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, I found it. Thank
And
you.
Bryce, if I can, I just want to add on to what Tira is saying there. Not only defending the EDC budget, but I'm going to be polite and say there's definitely been some interesting conversations with this particular group of Board of Finance members that are kind of setting off some fireworks. And I encourage all that live in this town to listen to these meetings. And it's definitely going to get a little fireworky tomorrow night for sure. But definitely wouldn't mind seeing everyone representing from this group at that meeting tomorrow night.
Yeah, and generally, I'm not in town every Thursday. I'm in Sutton, and
Yeah, no, it's no problem. Just if you can, I know everyone's busy.
well, yeah, this is an every Thursday unless we cancel for some reason. That's why I haven't been able to look in.
Yeah, so the unfortunate truth about functioning democracy is that it functions best when more people are involved, but because it's a lot of work, a lot of people don't get involved, right? So that's how we get to sort of
Yeah.
choices with so little input, right? So it stinks that it's such hard work, but it is hard work, and we all know it.
And that's a 7 o'clock meeting, is it?
Yeah, and they go 2 hours on the nose, 7 to 9. Aaron will cut that meeting off at 9, no matter what. Until the very last one, then they'll go long.
Do we know what they will be talking about, what they're starting with?
I could probably figure out where they left off. It was like selectmen's budgets. It was very, very early in the process. So it is highly unlikely that EDC is going to be discussed tomorrow unless somebody brings it up from the Board of Finance during those discussions. I do not anticipate that. So like, if you've already got plans for tomorrow night, I wouldn't sweat it on that end of it. Except in as far as Brian points out, it's a fraught process. It's one of the most fraught processes that the town goes through every year. And there are definitely some forces at play that are definitely trying to cut, take back, and withhold already on a sort of a principle of cutting and withholding more than what is the individual item, right? So that's a pretty typical mindset around here. But that is always what we're up against.
Well, having attended the high school thing, I am interested in the whole process, including the selectmen's part of the budget. I had guesses where things would be cut. I would certainly like to see everything go through, but like Brian Santos just said, there might be some fireworks, as it were, tomorrow. So that's why I was wondering what might be coming up that would be of special interest.
Yeah, I don't even think they're up to DPW budget yet. Although that might be one of the things they get to tomorrow, because I think that's early in the account numbers. I think that's in the 2000s.
I'm going to keep my specific comments to myself, but I encourage all to listen to the last meeting that was recorded from the 9th.
Santos, do you want to, since the agenda item is actually Main Street, did you want to chime in on anything about 65 Main while you're here? While we're here?
Sure. I'll bleed into the commissioner's comments as well, if that's okay with Yacino. But
Yeah.
I'm being mindful of my own time, and I know that we talked about like my one sheet before and some other marketing strategies, but I will regroup and think about marketing strategies, not only with 65 Main and the progress that we'll make with that, but also about all these other little things that we've been doing around town with the sidewalks, the roads, the overall plans that you just showed tonight, T. I think there's definitely a lot of marketing strategies that we should be putting together. I've mentioned this in the past, that we should be putting together like a list of properties that are available, ready for development, speaking with developers, coming up with this plans on how to get information out to people. I think that is a part of the Economic Development Commission's duty. And I just haven't been able to sit down and like really try to help steer that. And I've mentioned that, a year ago, and it's just time consuming, but we should be talking about these type of things. Others also say, I know it starts with infrastructure, with gas and sewer and water and all of that as well, but I mean, those things take time, and we should be marketing our town in a certain way. Because if Yosino and Dan are getting questions about St. Joseph's and other facilities and buildings randomly, we should be able to point to a document that has this sort of data that's already collected. That's a marketing portfolio, if you will. But I don't know. I'll shut up now and stop my rambling. But eventually, we need to take that sort of direction. Eventually.
Yeah, and for now, we are doing. Tiara comes to the TBA meetings, and someone asked about the mill this past meeting, and she's been available to answer some of these questions that are not well documented, like you point out, Brad.
Well, the thing I think about is, and again, this is not new information to this particular group, but Belden Corticelli Mill property, getting Mr. Scott to the table, and what is the game plan, right? Like, it's such an eyesore. We've talked about it for years. Someone needs to take the initiative to get that thing going, right? And I know I bring it up, and I wish I had more time to help lead that charge. I just do not right now, but we need to continue to talk about it. That's all.
I strongly agree with that. I really think that what I'm reading about proposed uses for the former bakery and then the school are not the image that I thought we were trying to build for Main Street. Rent it yourself, store it yourself. I mean, that's passé. And how about now we're going to have 100 one-bedroom apartments?
40.
40.
Well, still 41 bedroom. It just seems to me that what Brian said is correct. And I've said it too. I've raised the issue for years now, and I do have more time, but I don't have the initiative to try to push this stuff. I can't make people do things. I don't want to make people do things, but we've been talking about that all these commercial properties that nobody's moving. We stood in front of 65 Main Street with Senator Blumenthal, and I said, it's up to us to come up with an idea for that. And I think that was prophetic, because the idea that came up is we're going to divide this into self-storage units. It's just lack of imagination. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that the image that we thought we were looking for when we said we're going to revitalize Main Street?
Well, if I can respond to that, considering, planning, I'm a member of planning and zoning, but listen, do I feel there could have been a marketing strategy to bring other developers to the table on the use of the bakery or even the use of St. Joseph's? Absolutely, Charlie. But when
We don't have anybody to do it.
But when things are presented, or if you're going to ask me, do I prefer to see another abandoned building in our community in St. Joseph's? I do not support that. And actually, that particular developer is going to make that piece of property pretty darn nice. And it's going to be very presentable. And I think there's only so many uses that could be inserted in that particular property. So of course, I think we're gonna jump all over it. And I think that the bakery is so expansive, that piece of property, that again, is limiting its use. Do I think it could have been utilized for better than a storage facility? You're damn right. I think it could have been utilized for something else. But again, I'm not interested in having a piece of abandoned property sitting there. So
And
anyway,
if I could just interject on this, just very briefly, I will remind you about something that applies to both of those properties. They were and are privately owned and not in tax arrears, which means that the town does not have a tremendous amount of leverage to interfere with a private sale or private development. And Superior Bakery, the company that owns that, is a very, for lack of a better term, predatory national bakery company that goes out of their way to put smaller bakeries out of business. And they had specifically a non-compete condition on the sale of that. We had other bakeries interested in going in there. They were not permitted to buy it. And I told the guy who, got approved for the self-storage facility, I said, essentially what you guys are saying, right? If I had to pick something to go in there, it wouldn't be self-storage. But when he came forward, I said, you've got a lot of extra space here. He himself was always talking about having some of the main bakery building be available for folks like Dan, who are contractors who want to store materials and also potentially have office space there. So that was always a part of his plan. And what in conversation with him, I won't say I convinced him, but put in his ear, they were initially going to carve off the ranch house that's up on the hill and sell it as a residence. I said, why don't you keep that as an income earning property, and you can make that more commercial professional office space for rent, potentially also retail space for rent, because it's got that shared driveway with the storage facility now. That would be a weird thing for a residential use. Awkward for the people who actually lived there to be sharing a driveway with people driving in for self-storage. Why don't you consider this commercial use? And that is what he ended up proposing and getting approved for to planning and zoning. So, our leverage over private transactions, extremely low unless there's something like a tax bill outstanding. And I will tell you, in terms of St. Joseph's Church, St. Joseph's School, I can pretty much guarantee you that the diocese only ever wanted that to go for apartments. So that was going to be a just based on the background that I've heard from the developer who's now approved. And 40 one-bedroom apartments, Charlie, that is gold. That is a missing piece of our housing ecosystem. We do not have studios in this region. We barely have one bedrooms in this region. The increased density in that neighborhood is going to be so helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Joanne, for
That was
chiming
a
in.
great boost. Yes, having rentals, are you kidding? We need them so desperately. And how is that a bad thing?
yeah,
People live here anyway, so I mean, how is it a bad thing to have all of a sudden we have 40 more apartments that people can rent, and they'll be rented immediately, I'm sure.
I was just going to add to Joanne's comment. Your real estate knowledge at the planning and zoning meeting when we were approving or evaluating the St. Joseph property would have been most beneficial that particular night when we were challenged about the number of units being indicated on the plans. Even though it did go through as 40, it was challenged quite heavily. And I just want to make a note of that your real estate background would have brought some higher level of education to the table.
You're right. I didn't think of that. And I did read in the newspaper, too, how somebody said how it was going to choke our schools. What? How are 41 apartment units going to overflow our schools?
Never mind
that-
never mind that the school is undersubscribed. We actually need more students in the school. So that's a whole
We got
different
plenty of room for
Yeah,
students.
that's a
Absolutely.
whole different conversation. But to go back on the idea of one bedrooms, and this is a point I've made to a couple of people. My first apartment, or actually my second apartment, but my first apartment that I had on my own was a studio apartment. It is the reason I was able to not live in my parents' house with a low-wage night job that I went to after I was out of classes in school, right? That is how young people live in and stay in communities, is they have housing that is scaled to their wage, their family size, and their experience. Without studio apartments, none of your kids are ever moving out of your basement unless they happen to meet somebody and get married, right? That's what studio apartments are for. And they are missing in this entire region. Interestingly enough, and the other thing somebody was complaining about was, you know, that $1,000 couldn't possibly be the market rate. Let me tell you about the studio apartment I lived in the Fenway on Park Drive. In 1992, that 400 square foot was between 320 and or 350 and 520 square feet, depending on which one it was in. I can't remember. Cost me in 1991 or 92, $575 a month. That same apartment now in the Fenway on Park Drive in the city of Boston rents for $2,000. So $1,000 for a one bed out here is reasonable market for here, but more importantly, because Worcester is gentrifying and people are getting priced out of that city, is an absolutely affordable market rate coming down here. So unless we have lower cost options for the people who actually live here, it's going to just force everybody further and further out of Thompson who are already here. So those small units at relatively low cost are absolutely critical.
I think it's a great move because, again, we've been talking about this with the mill and people eventually moving in there. Well, this will be a quicker project, I assume, to get up and running. And when those people move in, you have more density to go to the businesses that we're hoping move into town. That's why it's a shame that Jill and G's didn't work out or was there too soon, because the people haven't come yet. Right there, you have 40 studio apartments. Those aren't necessarily people that are even going to bother cooking for themselves because they're not families. So they'll pop into the restaurant across the street and spend their money. And it's the perfect thing for that area.
Density supports business development. Full stop.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I thought.
I'll admit that's a different aspect. What I wasn't thinking about overtaxing the school. I was thinking about overtaxing the rest of the, I mean, we don't have police. We have volunteer ambulance, you know, it just seemed like it was, my initial thought was that it was ill-advised, and that's that. I will say this about, and then I'll close off because we all want to adjourn, but I lived about 3 blocks away from the Narragansett Brewery in the 1980s and to 2005. And we really wanted to see that renovated and restored and something put in there. There were all sorts of good ideas, but it didn't move forward until they finally ripped the building down. And that personally is what I had advocated for the bakery, especially when I heard Flowers owned it and they were being monopolistic about it and saying they didn't want people to run a bakery in there. That's a lot of acreage, and if it was approached as a blank slate, it made sense to me. But hey, it's not my money. It's not my money. All I can do is suggest based on my experience and what I think will work for this town, what I hope will work for this town, and I'll put my energy into anything that somebody says needs to be done.
Bottom, people who own it get to make the call. I mean, we've been talking for a long time about housing, and you know, I agree with Kira and Lafredo. You know, studio apartments. We're trying to keep people in town with the EDC, with the TBA, trying to keep businesses here. getting the kids out of the basement, getting a studio apartment, I think it's great, better than an empty building. It's same thing with Superior. We don't own it. We didn't buy it. It's better than an empty building, a rat infested, mess on Main Street. So, I consider them good things for right now.
Yeah, both of those plans were very thoughtfully put together. They're not, neither of the applicants, developers, however you want to think of them, are at all fly-by-nights.
Yeah, I would have liked to see some type of industry or a bakery in Superior, but again, we didn't buy it. We don't own it.
No, but to Brian Santos's point, we weren't even trying to lobby for commercial developers with ideas. We just, oh, well, there it is. Okay. No, now it's done.
There was
What Brian Santos was suggesting a few minutes ago about getting involved is absolutely true. But how do we get involved and get ahead of the process is what I don't know. It's what
So
I've been asking.
I was involved with Superior Bakery, with the listing agent broker. I went on the walkthrough with them when they first were contacted to put it on the market. I talked to them about, where my preferences would be in terms of types of things that could go in there. Actually, the first thing that came out of my mouth was brewery, because you can fit huge brew tanks in there.
Mhm.
Suggested several things to them. Ultimately, that broker's representing the seller. The seller wants to sell it, and the seller sold it or is selling it. I don't believe that transaction is completed yet, to the potential buyer that met their criteria. And that's what you've got. They're private transactions.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's like ripping down the mill that was at the bottom of the hill from you, Tara. It was a private transaction, and we're trying to figure out how do we move this town forward?
That was not a private transaction. That was the town of Thompson choosing to knock that building down.
No, somebody ripped it down for materials. They stripped out all the materials that were there and took them away and sold them. And that kind of stuff
it was
happens a
torn
lot.
down.
What property?
Belden
The town
Cordicelli.
might have approved
Oh.
the application to rip it down, but the town, any more than what we just heard a few minutes ago, we couldn't tell them rip down the old bakery because we think that there's a better use for the property.
Oh,
That was a
Charlie, to that
private
point-
deal.
Yeah, Charlie, let me just interject one thing. I got to leave in 5 minutes, but that property came on, the bakery that we're talking about came on the market November the 8th. Okay, so it came on the market November 8th. December 16th, which is what, 35 days later, it was under contract. So there was no time for us as a town to try to put together some plan for the seller to help them sell it. They didn't need the help. I mean, it sold in a month. It hasn't closed, but in over 30 days, they found a buyer. So they didn't need our help or suggestions because it sold that quickly. If it had been on the market for a year or two, then I think we as a committee should step in. But when a market's fresh to the market, it's really none of our concern as to how to promote it or to try to promote it.
Well, then
That's my opinion.
let's back up from your statement. Something's been on the market for a year or two. We've seen things that have been on the market for 10 or 15 years and 20 years in
Yeah,
this
you're
town.
talking about buildings, yes. That's the only property that I can think of that's still.
And let me just be clear. I work on building all the time in the background. It is a difficult and complicated property, not least because the building was knocked down because of choices that were made, whether municipal, private, or otherwise, that were well-meaning, but had long-range unintended consequences. Nobody here can undo what happened 12 years ago or however long ago that happened. All we can try to do is resolve it. And we do have some avenues of action there, but because the fate of that property is connected to the fate of the river mill, we cannot be as quick to act as we otherwise would like.
And we all did get together with 929 when one of the options was to tear that down. Santos was on the board, Charlie was on the board, we all took action. We all wrote letters, we advocated for keeping the building, and we found a way to keep the building. So we did all pitch in, like we said that we should.
We could do it. It's hard work. And it's hard work that all of us are doing as volunteers, with the exception of Tira. All of the rest of us are doing this as volunteers.
Yeah.
But again, with a private sale, if it meets the requirements of the seller, we don't have much to say.
Yeah, but I understand that. But like, for example, we're talking about a vision for Main Street. If we had a vision similar to what Tira showed us about for the Veterans Memorial, if we had a vision and we could show it to people that were selling property and buying property, we'd be further ahead. But we don't even have a vision of what we want. We're saying, geez, we'd like to get the street resurfaced, but it's going to be 6 years. Everything takes so long. I'm just getting tired of it.
It
But
does.
I agree with you, Charlie. Just to kind of sum this up here, eventually I think there's going to be a subcommittee that just talks about marketing and what that strategy is. And I don't think we're there just yet. But I think that would be very prudent of us to do that in the near future.
Maybe we should reactivate the branding committee to look at things like that. Things
Well,
that,
it would be a similar effort for sure. You know, a
well, it's
subcommittee
a
of
more
economic.
focused effort. It's a smaller.
Correct.
Marketing and branding, though, could be similar. I think marketing is a very specific, driven, visionary type of thing. And that's why I'm saying I don't have the time right now to even focus my attention on that. But I think as a group, we can just continue to talk about it, and eventually it will come to fruition, I guess. That's all.
I think we beat that one for the time being. Do we have any other comments by the members?
Nope,
Suggestions?
I'm all set. Gotta get going anyway.
Okay, it's okay with me.
But I gotta go pick up my son at work, so we're down to one car in this family, so it's a little difficult.
A motion to adjourn.
Well, next meeting is April 19th.
Yeah, I will be in California, so unfortunately I will miss that meeting, taking the family on a nice California West Coast trip. I will miss that
Take
meeting.
take your laptop and zoom in.
I definitely will have my laptop with me. Depends on where I am, Charlie.
Bring
Oh,
umbrellas, lots of umbrellas.
Don't you even, Brian, you
Yeah.
take your vacation when you take your vacation.
Right?
And we'll live through you vicariously. So let's 7:45 PM.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Right.
Night.